When my appendix burst, I messaged the family group. Emergency surgery. I'm scared. My family replied with a beach selfie. Sending good vibes. Nobody showed. A week later, still in a hospital gown, I checked my phone, 79 missed calls, and a text from Mom. Call back now. Everything's falling apart. I took a deep breath in. I used to believe that when everything goes to hell, your family shows up. No matter the time, the distance, the inconvenience. That's what we were taught. My parents always said, if something happens, we'll always be there to help. They said it so often, it felt like a promise carved into stone. I built my life around that belief. For years, I was the one picking up the pieces. When Dad's business tanked, I helped cover their mortgage for almost 2 years, even when it meant eating instant noodles for weeks. When Jason, my younger brother, dropped out of college and spiraled into a jobless haze, I let him crash at my place, added him to my car insurance, paid for his groceries. Emily, my sister, never really held a stable job, so I quietly helped cover her rent and wired her cash whenever she called crying about daycare bills. It was always something. And I never said no. They called me dependable. Generous. A rock. I took it as a compliment. Then, one random Thursday afternoon, I collapsed on my apartment floor. I'd been feeling off all morning, nausea, weird stomach pain, but I figured it was just something I ate. By the time I called 911, I was on the floor, drenched in sweat, clutching my side and trying not to black out. At the hospital, they rushed me into surgery. Burst appendix. The doctor said I was lucky I called when I did. Another hour and I could have gone septic. As they wheeled me into pre-op, I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and opened the family group chat. I didn't write anything dramatic, just what felt honest in that moment. Emergency surgery. I'm scared. I put the phone down, expecting it to blow up within minutes. Maybe Dad calling, Mom FaceTiming, Emily freaking out. Something. 30 minutes passed. Nothing. Then, finally, one ping. A message. It was a photo. My parents, grinning on a beach somewhere in Florida. Mom was holding a margarita. Dad was making that face he always made when he thought he looked cool. Big smiles, golden sand behind them. They looked like they were in the middle of a vacation photo shoot. Caption, sending good vibes. That was it. No. Are you okay? No. We're coming. Just a goddamn beach selfie. I stared at it, waiting for the punchline. It never came. I checked again to make sure I hadn't missed anything. Maybe a follow-up from Jason or Emily. Maybe a call. Nothing. They'd all seen the message. And they'd all gone silent. I remember the ceiling lights above me as they rolled me into surgery. I kept wondering, what if I don't wake up? Would they even notice? Would they find out through a hospital call, or would they just keep sipping cocktails and posting beach stories? When I woke up, I was groggy, sore, and hooked up to more machines than I could count. Still no calls. Still no visits. But around 8 p.m. that night, the door creaked open and in came Aunt Rachel. She had this oversized purse stuffed with snacks, a phone charger, and one of those soft fleece blankets from the drugstore. She looked around the room like she expected to see others there, but when she saw it was just me, she didn't say a word. Just sat down, pulled out a crossword puzzle book, and stayed. An hour later, my grandmother shuffled in. 84 years old. She walked with a cane, holding a Tupperware container in one hand and her purse in the other. She moved slowly but with purpose. She sat beside me, opened the container, and offered me homemade soup even though I couldn't eat yet. She stayed all night. They didn't leave. Not once. When the nurses told them visiting hours were over, they ignored it. Just kept sitting, talking quietly, making sure I wasn't alone. And it hit me right there, sometime around 3 a.m., with the machines beeping around me and the antiseptic smell in the air. I had wasted years of my life helping people who wouldn't even show up when I was on the edge of dying. I paid their bills. I cleaned up their messes. I bailed them out over and over again. And in the one moment I needed them, they were on a beach, sending good vibes. That was when something cracked open in me. When I got out of that hospital, things were going to be different. I wasn't going back to being the fixer. Not for them. I didn't know what was coming next, but whatever it wasn't going to be more of the same. Hospitals are loud in a quiet way. Machines beep, carts squeak, nurses whisper just loud enough to be heard. But even with all that background noise, the silence from my family was the only thing I could hear. After the surgery, I was in recovery with tubes in my arm and a foggy brain. The painkillers blurred everything, but not enough to make me forget that I'd almost died alone. I kept checking my phone, expecting missed calls, voice messages, anything. There was nothing. The group chat stayed as it was, that stupid beach photo from my parents. I reread it more than once, like maybe if I stared long enough, a second message would pop up beneath it. Some explanation, some correction. I half convinced myself they'd sent it before reading what I wrote. But no, the read receipts were there. They saw it. They knew. And they went back to their vacation. 3 days passed before anyone said a word. Emily sent a thumbs-up emoji to a completely unrelated message from a week earlier about Jason's dog chewing up his couch. No mention of my surgery. Not even a question. I stared at that emoji for a long time. Aunt Rachel was the one holding everything together. She checked in with the nurses, brought me clothes, talked to the billing department about the insurance gaps. She even stayed on the night I had that allergic reaction to one of the meds and needed oxygen for a few hours. And Grandma. Grandma was a different kind of anchor. She didn't talk much, didn't ask how I was feeling. She just sat beside me, knitting or doing her puzzles, occasionally reaching over to squeeze my hand without saying anything. They were the only ones who came. The only ones who stayed. I don't know what changed in me first, the disappointment or the clarity. But somewhere around the 4th day, it hit me in a way I couldn't unfeel. I wasn't part of a family. I was a service. I'd been the one holding it all up. The one they lean on, borrowed from, dumped problems onto. And I never asked for anything in return because I believed the promise they always repeated. If something happens, we'll always be there. Well, something happened. And they weren't. By day 6, I was well enough to sit up on my own. Aunt Rachel brought a small mirror so I could see the incision. It was uglier than I expected. Angry red skin, swollen, stapled. It looked like damage. It was damage. My phone had been on silent. I turned it off silent and watched the flood come in. 79 missed calls. I just stared at the number. Jason's name was repeated over and over, mixed with Mom, Dad, and Emily. 2 voicemails. The first one was from Emily, rambling about something being urgent. The second was from Mom. Call back. Now. Everything's falling apart. I didn't call. Instead, I sat there in my hospital gown, staring out the window as the sun went down, and let the silence stretch. Grandma came in right around then. She sat in her usual chair, pulled out her puzzle book, and didn't ask about the calls. I told her anyway. They're all freaking out, I said. Something's wrong. They want me to fix it. She nodded slowly, flipped a page, and circled a word with her pen. Then she smiled. That was all I needed to know. She understood what I'd finally realized, that my entire relationship with them was built on obligation. My role in the family was never son or brother. It was backup plan. They didn't love me for who I was. They loved me for what I gave them. And now that I was no longer useful, they were panicking. Good. They showed up the next morning. I was sitting up, eating a dry piece of toast while Aunt Rachel argued with billing over the phone in the corner. Grandma was next to me, humming to herself and trying to figure out a crossword clue. I hadn't told them anything about the calls yet, not because I was hiding it, but because I knew exactly where this was heading, and I wanted witnesses. I heard their voices before I saw them. Loud, irritated, just outside the door. Then my dad walked in first, eyes scanning the room like he was looking for a fight. Mom followed, her mouth set in a line that was probably supposed to look concerned. Jason trailed behind them, looking exhausted like he'd been through something. Emily wasn't far behind, holding her phone like she was expecting a call any second. They didn't say, "Hello?" They didn't say, "How are you?" Mom started talking immediately. "We need the keys." I blinked. "What?" "To the house," Dad said. "The car's done for. Transmission or something. It's toast. We need to borrow your car. And we need somewhere to stay while we sort this out." He said it like he was reading off a grocery list. Emily finally chimed in, like this was a perfectly normal request. "It's not like you're using the place, right? We'll just stay for a few days, maybe a week. Just until we figure things out." I looked over at Grandma. She was just sitting there, watching them, expression flat. Rachel was still on the phone in the corner, but she'd gone completely still. Jason finally spoke. We're kinda in a rush here, Mike. Can we just get the keys? It was like they had collectively blacked out the part where I was still in a hospital gown, stitched together with metal, eating unbuttered toast, and recovering from emergency surgery. They didn't ask how I was feeling. They didn't apologize for not showing up. They didn't even acknowledge it. I set the toast down. No. It was the first time I'd ever said that to them. Ever. They all kind of froze. Like the word didn't compute. Jason laughed a little, like I was joking. What do you mean no? You're not even out of the hospital. What do you need the house for? I mean no, I said. You're not getting the car. You're not getting the keys. And you're not staying at my house. Dad looked like he was about to blow a fuse. Michael, we're not in the mood for this. This is a family emergency. I looked at him dead in the eye. So was mine. That shut them up for a second. Then Emily tried to slide in with a tone she usually reserved for getting her way. Come on. Don't do this. We're all stressed out. Things have been hard for everyone. Grandma stood up. Slowly. Quietly. But with a presence that made everyone take a step back. She looked right at my dad. Then my mom. Then Jason and Emily. You didn't come when he almost died. You didn't call. You didn't show up. You left him alone. We stayed. We took care of him. And now you come in here talking about borrowing cars and houses like nothing happened? She shook her head. You should be ashamed. Nobody said a word. Aunt Rachel finally hung up the phone and walked over. She didn't say anything either. Just stood on my other side, arms crossed. I turned back to them. I'm done helping. With all of it. No more bills. No more transfers. No more late-night phone calls about last-minute problems. You're on your own now. All of you. Dad opened his mouth, probably to yell, but Mom put her hand on his arm. She could see it. Something had changed. Permanently. They didn't stay long after that. No dramatic exit. No shouting. Just a quiet, uncomfortable retreat. Like they were leaving a meeting they hadn't prepared for. When the door closed behind them, Grandma sat back down and picked up her puzzle. Rachel handed me my water like nothing had happened. But everything had changed. And I felt it for the first time, the weight lifting. After they left the hospital room, it felt like something in the air shifted. Not lighter. Not peaceful. Just different. Like the room had finally snapped back into its real shape after being stretched too thin for too long. Grandma went back to her crossword. Rachel stayed a while longer, helping me call the nurse for pain meds, but none of us said much. The confrontation hadn't been loud or dramatic, but it was final. Everyone knew it. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because of the pain. I kept replaying the moment Jason said, "Can we just get the keys?" The absolute entitlement in his voice, like I was a resource, not a person recovering from surgery, not their brother, not even someone they needed to pretend to care about. Just a vending machine that wasn't cooperating. The next morning, the nurse wheeled in my breakfast, bland oatmeal and something that might have been scrambled eggs. Before I could even take a bite, she said someone had dropped off a bag for me at the front desk. It was my gym bag. Right away, I knew it wasn't from Rachel or Grandma. Inside were 3 random t-shirts, a bottle of cheap protein powder, and my old insurance folder. No socks. No toothbrush. Just the exact kind of thoughtless packing Jason would do when he thought he was helping but was actually just taking something. He'd gone into my apartment. That was when I remembered, he still had a key. From years ago, when he'd crashed on my couch and I forgot to ask for it back. I called Rachel. 2 hours later, she had a locksmith at my place rekeying every door, including the garage and storage. I watched the feed from my doorbell cam while they worked. Jason showed up halfway through, parked across the street in Mom's car. Just sat there, watching them change the locks, probably trying to decide if he should come over and cause a scene. He didn't. But he didn't need to. The storm was coming anyway. By noon, my phone blew up. Jason first. Why is the key not working? Did you change the locks? Are you serious? Then Emily. I just got a notice daycare payment didn't go through. Is something wrong with your bank? Then my dad, not even trying to fake politeness. The mortgage transfer bounced. Fix it. No. Hey, how are you feeling? No mention of the fact I was still in a hospital bed. I didn't respond. Not to any of them. Instead, I spent the next few hours methodically cutting every tie. Removed Jason from my car insurance. Unlinked Emily's Venmo from my credit card. Cancelled the recurring transfers to my parents' mortgage, which, for the record, I'd been covering every month for almost 2 years without them ever asking where the money came from. By the time I was done, I felt exhausted. Not from the effort, from the relief. Like I'd been underwater for years and finally made it to the surface. But then came something I didn't see coming. Around 4 p.m., a woman showed up at the hospital, dressed business casual with a clipboard in hand. She introduced herself as a social worker and said she needed to speak with me privately. I thought maybe it was discharge paperwork or something to do with insurance. No. She said someone had anonymously reported concerns about elder neglect. That I had been taking advantage of my grandmother financially. That she might be living in unsafe conditions. That I had denied her access to care. I stared at her for a few seconds, waiting for the punchline. It didn't come. They gave your name, she said. And hers. I couldn't even fake surprise. Of course they did. Of course, when money dried up and the locks were changed, they panicked and went straight for the nuclear option. They wanted to flip the narrative, paint me as the villain, make themselves the victims, and force me back into place through guilt and shame. Grandma just happened to walk in a minute later. The social worker asked if she could speak with her, and I didn't even have to explain. Grandma had already guessed what was going on. She sat with the woman for 15 minutes. Showed her photos of her bridge club, the garden she still kept up herself, her medical bills, all paid. Her pantry, always full. Her medication schedule, perfectly organized. By the time they finished, the social worker looked embarrassed. She apologized to me on the way out. I didn't say much. I was too busy thinking about the fact that my own family, the people I had bailed out of debt, fed, housed, and rescued for years, had actually tried to frame me. They had called in a government agency, during my recovery from emergency surgery, to try and punish me for saying no. They weren't just selfish. They were dangerous. And I realized, right then, the only way to fix this wasn't just cutting ties. It was exposing them. The social worker's visit lit something inside me I didn't even know I had left. It wasn't just anger. It was clarity. The kind that comes when you finally stop making excuses for people who've been walking all over you for years. After she left, Grandma sat down next to me and said, almost casually, "They're scared now." Good. Rachel came back an hour later with a thick folder in her hand and that same calm energy she always carried. She used to work in legal aid and knew exactly what I was thinking before I even opened my mouth. "You want to take this to the next level," she said. "Let's do it right." The next few days became a quiet storm of preparation. From my hospital bed, I went through every record, email, text, and transfer I'd made to my family in the past 5 years. Rachel helped organize it all. Grandma kept everyone fed and reminded me to take breaks before my blood pressure spiked. By the time I was discharged, we had over 100 pages of documented financial support. Rent payments, mortgage transfers, utility bills, car insurance, daycare costs. It totaled over $84,000. $84,000 I had given them. Some of it they asked for. Most of it, they just expected. My plan wasn't revenge. It wasn't about suing them or making a public scene. It was about protecting myself, legally, financially, and emotionally, from people who had made it their mission to keep me small, broke, and afraid to say no. On my first full day back home, I filed a police report about the unauthorized entry into my house. I didn't press charges, but I wanted it on record. Then I had an attorney, one of Rachel's contacts, send out a cease and desist letter to each of them. It was short and sharp. Do not contact me again. Any attempt to enter my home, interfere with my finances, or harass me through third parties will result in legal action. The responses came fast. Jason sent a voice note that started with, "Are you *****ing serious?" and spiraled into a rant about family loyalty, and how I was abandoning them when they needed me most. Emily texted me a wall of emotional manipulation, something about how her daughter missed me, how I was punishing all of them for one mistake, how I was the one breaking the family apart. Dad left a voicemail I didn't even listen to. I forwarded it straight to the attorney. Mom, though, she showed up in person. She came to my building 3 days later. Tried to guilt the front desk into letting her up. When that didn't work, she waited outside for over an hour. I only knew because I got an alert from my security cam. She was pacing, making phone calls, probably hoping someone inside would let her in. Eventually, Rachel came down and talked to her. I don't know what was said, but Mom left 10 minutes later, and she's never come back. The best part? 2 weeks later, Grandma got a call from the same social worker. They'd completed a follow-up, just a standard check-in. But she let it slip. The report had been flagged as potentially retaliatory. Turns out, trying to weaponize elder abuse reports against someone who's spent years supporting the person in question doesn't go over well in the system. That little attempt to ruin me? It backfired. Hard. Grandma didn't gloat. She just said, "That's the thing about liars. Eventually, they start choking on their own stories." And she was right. Because while they were unraveling, dodging bills, getting denied for credit cards now that their financial backup was gone, and trying to figure out who to lean on next, I was starting over. But this time for me. 3 weeks after being discharged, I woke up in my own bed for the first time in what felt like years. The apartment was quiet. No calls. No texts. No guilt-tripping from Emily. No late-night emergencies from Jason. No passive-aggressive voicemails from Dad. Just silence. And peace. The house even felt different. Like it had shed something. Like all the weight I'd carried for them had lived in these walls, and now it was gone. I started to get my life back. Got promoted at work 2 weeks later. I hadn't even told them I'd been in the hospital until after the fact, but apparently someone noticed I'd never missed a deadline, even with a ruptured appendix. They offered a raise. I took it without blinking. Started going to the gym again. Started sleeping through the night. Started cooking, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. It felt like I was breathing with both lungs for the first time. Then came the knock. It was late. Around 10 p.m. I was cleaning up dishes when I heard it, not the doorbell, but a slow, deliberate knock. I checked the camera. It wasn't any of them. It was a teenage girl. I hesitated. Opened the app to talk through the speaker. Asked if she was okay. She looked up into the camera and said, "Are you Michael?" I said yes. She swallowed hard, looked down, then said something that hit me like a freight train. "I think you might be my brother." I froze. I opened the door slowly, heart racing, and saw her properly for the first time. Maybe 16. Nervous. Holding a small backpack. She looked familiar, not in the face, but in the eyes. The same gray-green color as mine. Same shape. Same way of narrowing when confused. Her name was Lily. And her story unraveled quickly. Her mother, a woman my dad had briefly worked with during one of his consulting gigs, years ago, had recently passed away. In a box of old letters, Lily had found one addressed to her, explaining that her biological father was someone named Mark Holloway, my dad. She'd spent weeks trying to track him down. When she found out about me, she thought maybe I could help her figure out what to do next. I let her in. Gave her a glass of water. Called Grandma and Rachel immediately. And just like they had with me, they showed up. Without hesitation. We didn't tell the rest of the family. Not yet. Lily didn't want anything from them. She wasn't looking for money or handouts. She just wanted answers. Closure. And maybe someone who wouldn't abandon her the moment things got hard. So she stayed with us for a while. She fit right in. Smarter than she realized. Quiet but observant. She and Grandma played cards every night. Rachel took her to her first real job interview. I helped her apply to finish her GED. She got it 2 months later. And slowly, she became part of our family. The kind that shows up. The kind that stays. As for the others? The original family? They spiraled. Jason got evicted. Emily moved in with friends and started a GoFundMe that barely raised a few $100. My parents sold the beach timeshare, probably to stay afloat, and last I heard, they were trying to rent out rooms in their house. They called sometimes. Left messages. Mostly rambling apologies mixed with requests for just a little help. I never answered. Not out of bitterness, I just didn't owe them anything anymore. The people who mattered were already here. The last night I saw Lily before she moved into her own apartment, she asked why I didn't just go back to how things were, why I didn't forgive them, just to make it easier. I told her the truth. Forgiveness isn't about pretending nothing happened. Sometimes it's about accepting that some people chose their absence. And I finally chose mine. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the family servant. I wasn't the emergency contact. I wasn't the fixer, the bank, the fallback. I was just Michael. And that was finally enough. Final update. A few weeks after Lily moved into her own place, a small studio about 15 minutes away, life finally felt still. Not boring. Just stable. We had a routine. Rachel and I met up every Sunday for coffee. Grandma had joined a local bridge league and started winning tournaments like she was hustling people for money. Lily got promoted to assistant manager at the bookstore where she worked, and I'd stopped waking up in the middle of the night expecting a crisis to be waiting on my phone. For once, it felt like life wasn't about reacting. It was about living. Then, one Thursday afternoon, I got a letter. A real one. Envelope. Stamp. Handwritten return address. No name. Just a street and number from a place 3 states over. I almost tossed it, assuming it was junk or maybe some legal nonsense sent to the wrong guy, but something made me open it. It was 2 pages. Carefully written. No signature. Just the words. From someone who knows. It started like this. Your dad has another family. One you've never heard about. I was part of it. And I think you deserve to know the truth. I read it 3 times. At first I thought it was some kind of prank. But the writer went into detail, names, dates, towns. Mentions of my dad taking long trips out of state for work during the late 90s and early 2000s, disappearing for weeks, saying he was helping old friends get back on their feet. According to the letter, during that time, he had a second partner, not legally married, but close enough. They had 2 kids. A boy and a girl. The girl was now in college. The boy? In prison. The writer didn't claim to be either of them. Just said they were someone who had been close to that part of my father's life, and had been cut out just like everyone else when things got inconvenient. They weren't asking for anything. No money. No contact. They just said, if you want to know more, here's my number. I sat there for over an hour, just staring at the paper. The letter smelled like dust and old ink. No cologne. No perfume. Just ink, paper, and whatever else clings to secrets when they've been locked away too long. I didn't call the number. Not that night. Instead, I called Lily. She didn't even seem shocked. Just said, he probably thought he could lie forever. That no one would connect the dots. We agreed not to tell Grandma yet. Not until we had more than a letter and a hunch. So I did something I never thought I'd do again. I reached out to someone in the family. Not Mom. Not Dad. Not Jason or Emily. I called my uncle, my dad's estranged younger brother. The one no one ever talked about. The one who vanished from family events after a falling out 15 years ago. I found his email buried in an old contacts list. Sent him a short message. You don't owe me anything. But I just received a letter that suggests Dad had another family. I thought you might know something. I'm not looking for drama, just the truth. He responded in less than 20 minutes. Call me. What he told me in that call unraveled everything I thought I knew about my dad. But I'll get to that next.